I am Patricia Langan, the Regional Director for the Middle East for WEConnect International. Welcome to our most recent webinar in the series, How to Do Business With Our Member Buyers. This webinar actually was created for women-owned businesses who are based in the Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa. So with that, I am going to move forward. This is the agenda today. We'll have a welcome and introductions. I am going to do a very short introduction to WEConnect International for those of you who don't know us. Then we're going to spend at least 30 minutes and probably more with Diana Saykali, who is, Saykali, who is with Mars, the chocolate company. Mars is a member buyer of WEConnect International. And she's going to talk about Mars' commitment to supplier diversity. And why it is important to the business. Mars purchasing principles, cycle and selection criteria, and Mars needs in the MENA and the Africa region. Sorry, that should say and Africa. Then we will continue with some questions and answers. But if you think of questions as we go, please put them in the chat. And we'll close off with some key takeaways. And then if you'd like to stay on for another few minutes, we're going to do some informal networking at this session. As I mentioned, I am the Regional Director for Middle East with WEConnect International. And we can also share if I get the permission, I'm going to be able to share these slides with you later. So let me start to introduce WEConnect International and why we exist. We believe that women are at the center of global business, and there are a lot of reasons why we believe that. First of all, you may know that 1/3 of all private businesses in the world are owned by women. And we also know from research that if men and women participated equally in the economy, global GDP would grow by at least $28 trillion. Okay. And the other really interesting point is that businesses that have at least one female founder perform 63% better than businesses that are founded by only males. I don't know, that's kind of a surprising and encouraging statistic. Another interesting statistic is that globally, women control consumer spending decisions. They control at least 85% of all the consumer spending decisions made in the world. But the alarming statistic is that same large influence is not reflected in supply chains. Today, less than 1% of all large corporate and government procurement spend worldwide goes to women-owned businesses. So only 1% of trillions of dollars of procurement spend is spent on women-owned businesses. So we see this as a great opportunity. This is why WEConnect International exists. Our objective is to get more women-owned businesses in supply chains, and our mission is to drive money into the hands of women business owners by enabling them to compete in the global marketplace. We were started more than 12 years ago, created by the world's largest companies. And today we have more than 150, actually we're all the way up to 165 member buyers. And we are a member-governed nonprofit. We are the only global nonprofit working with member buyers to identify, register, train women-owned businesses who are based outside the United States, and also to connect them to business opportunities. And today we have a database, and now this number is outdated. We have a database of more than 15,000 women-owned businesses across the world from 135 countries. These are our member buyers. You recognize most of these brands, I'm sure. Some of the most recent companies that joined us as member buyers include Amazon, Salesforce, Twitter, and Hershey's Chocolate. So you can see that our member buyers represent a variety of industries. They buy every category you can imagine. Mars is prominently there, as you can see. So what is our definition of a woman-owned business? For us, a woman-owned business is at least 51% owned by one or more women, and also managed and controlled by women. And it is a business that is independent. It's not part of a larger holding company. The reason I mention our criteria for ownership, management, and control is that this really is the world's gold standard. You're going to find some national or even international definitions that define women ownership as less than 51%. But we believe that to truly achieve our goals of empowering women-owned businesses, helping them grow, and getting money into their hands, the business should be at least majority owned by women and managed and controlled by women. There are several ways to be involved with WEConnect International. The first one is to register. In that way, you become part of our network, and your business is visible on our database of more than 15,000 women-owned businesses. This is great visibility for you to get in front of business large buying organizations. It's a great way too for you to be able to network with other women-owned businesses who are like-minded, who may even want to collaborate with you. And these women-owned businesses are primarily B2B businesses. There's a second way to join our network, and that is to take the next step and to certify. We currently certify businesses in 50 of the 135 countries. We're going to be adding certification in Kenya and UAE over the next year or two. And certification is a fee for service, meaning that you have to pay to certify on an annual basis. And the certification itself gets you a lot more visibility, a lot more benefits than just registering. It really elevates your visibility with our member buyers. This is a globally recognized certification. For example, if you are a currently, for example, in Nigeria, we offer certification. If you're certified out of Nigeria, that means that certification is recognized by buyers in Nigeria and beyond Nigeria as well. So with that, I would like to introduce our main speaker today. We're very honored to have Diana Saykali, who is a very experienced procurement professional, and she has worked in the FMCG verticals for a variety of companies. And now she's based out of Dubai. Yeah. And Diana has recently joined our advisory council for the Middle East, North Africa. So thank you, Diana, again for your leadership there. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Diana.
Thank you so much, Patricia, and hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. Thanks a lot to WeConnect for this opportunity to talk to women-owned businesses. It's an honor, really, for Mars to be part of this movement of encouraging, women-owned businesses in the region. So, as Patricia said, I represent Mars. I'm a strategic sourcing lead for Mars in the Middle East and Africa, and I take care of marketing and sales. But I was so excited to actually also add to my scope the, driving SDNI, supplier diversity and inclusion within Mars. So I'm really, again, very happy to be here today and to talk to you about procurement and about about Mars as well, you know, as a company. How do we look at tendering? So I want to share with you the agenda. What are we going to do today? I wanted to make it a bit interactive. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mentimeter. So Mentimeter is an interactive presentation where we can ask questions and get you to answer immediately. So I really hope you have your phones next to you. You can use your phones and, you know, go to your browser and type menti.com or mentimeter.com, and it will open a page for you. So we're going to start by playing a game. Okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions on Mentimeter, and I'll give you the code. So it will ask you for a code. I will give you the code in a second after I share the agenda. Then I'm going to talk to you a bit about a company perspective, not necessarily only Mars, but it's all companies, but Mars as well. And some useful definitions when it comes to tendering. What are the different ways to tender? And the documents that you need to keep. So this is really an educational session. I hope you will be benefiting from it, or it brings you more information about tendering. And, how do we source for SMEs or for women-owned businesses? And then some contracting hints and tips. We'll end up with another game, a quick one at the end, a quiz. And then there'll be, time for your Q&A, hopefully. So, and please, Patricia, keep me in check when it comes to time, if there is any need for me to, to accelerate.
I will.
Without further ado, let me I'll share my screen. I'm gonna go to my Mentimeter so that we start the game. Let me know, guys, when you see my screen, just, do a thumbs up or something, right? Please. So the first part is really, I want to tell you a bit more about Mars as a company. Not everyone is aware of what we do exactly and what are the brands we have. So I'm gonna go to the quiz. Are you guys ready? It's not a very long one. All right. What do you know about Mars? So just write down answers. What do you know about Mars? You have like 30 seconds. You can write down your answers. So let's see. M&M's, chocolate brand manufacturers. Perfect. I mean, there is no correct answer because all of this is correct, but let me just give you quickly exactly pet care and pet food. It's an FMCG. So just quickly about us, I'm going to admit someone here. Okay. So quickly about us, we are more than 131,000 associates. We actually are united by what we call the 5 principles. I'm going to share that with you later. Why is it important for you to know this? Because the principles are also applied to our suppliers, our extended partners. It was founded by Frank Mars in 1911. It's still a privately owned company. We are in 80 plus countries where we are operating. And it's a $1 billion brands. We have $1 billion brands like, what you see down here, Pedigree, Royal Canin, M&M's, Snickers, Twix, Dove, Whiskas, etc. So we have really, and Extra is our gum brand. And like somebody said, we have also pet care. So we have actually we own pet clinics around the world, mainly in the US. So now I think we're gonna have another. Those are one of some of our famous brands and favorites. Just for you to know, and I feel that everybody is aware of Mars. So I'm gonna go to the question 3 of 5. Guys, answer fast. How many principles do Mars have? How many principles do we have? I mentioned the principles. So how many do we have? In your opinion, do we have 5, 6, 1, or 10? Somebody's joining us. So we have 5 principles. Well, excellent. You guys did your homework. True. And the principles are, just go. Yeah, so those are our 5 principles, and I want to highlight the mutuality one. So as you see, quality, responsibility, mutuality, efficiency, and freedom. So those are the principles that we operate and abide by in our internal, interaction, but also externally. And mutuality is a very important principle for our suppliers because we are very mutual about, the relationships, and we ensure that our suppliers are treated in a very human way, as we treat ourselves. So this is very important. Now let's talk a bit procurement. I want to know a bit how much you know about procurement, and what do you know about the procurement function. So this is also a free answering question, so you can answer on your phones. Purchasing, supplier selection, supplier standard definition. It's the process of securing the right service providers or products, can be centralized or decentralized. It's the vendor's gateway, helps source suppliers of value, provide equality across the brands, 100%. Buy services or products, business, supply chain, and suppliers need to align. Excellent. That's true. I mean, 100% procurement is all that. And in companies like such as Mars, we have 2 kinds of procurement. We have the direct procurement and indirect. So the direct procurement are buyers like myself. So the indirect procurement is supporting any support for the bidding. It's actually related to contractual relationship with agencies that are supporting the marketing team's requirements with procurement responsibility to source for a 1 to 10. What is the level of comfort that you have with the tendering process? Your level of comfort when we say tendering process. Okay, some people are saying very high. Some people are saying not comfortable. Some people are saying 2. 2 means it's on the low side, right? Because 1 is the lowest, 10 is the highest. Confusing. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it is even confusing for us. All right, that's great. I think 6 is good. I mean, somebody has answered it. Somebody said 8. Wow, that's great. All right. We're going to talk a bit about this today in this presentation. Okay, depends on transparency. Yeah, I agree. Too much documents, really. Yeah, it really sometimes depends on what we're doing. It can require a lot of documentation. And we're going to talk about, some of those documents later as well. Okay, I will, we have 8 out of 14 who answered. Shall I wait a little bit more? Or you guys are okay? All right. So anybody who joined recently, you can go to menti.com and use the code that is shown on the screen so that you can play with us a little bit.
Diana, as long as we can
Yeah.
hear you now, can you explain the difference between direct and indirect procurement again? Because you were breaking up before.
Sure, of course. I'm so sorry for this. So direct procurement. Now, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay. So the difference between direct is the procurement for anything that goes into the final product of a company. Okay. So at Mars, it is the buyers who take care of procuring the packaging materials, the raw materials that, sugar, cocoa, milk, all those materials that go into the production of the final product. All right. Clear? The indirect procurement is anything that doesn't go into the inventory or doesn't go into the final product. So I gave an example of marketing. So any, marketing procurement is an indirect procurement because it is a relationship with an external agency to provide services or even products for the internal operations of the company. All right, anything that supports the final product that is going out into the market. Versus direct, it's actually anything that goes into this final product and that is consumed by the consumers. Okay. Some people call them inventory, non-inventory. All right, so I hope it's clear. Please feel free to ask questions if there are any. That we're gonna go to the last question, I guess, 4 out of 5. Did you ever do business with Mars? Anybody? Let's see. Yes, no, I'm not interested. It's okay, feel free. It's an anonymous answer. So yes, 2 said yes, 3 say they didn't. And then some, I would love to hear your experience later, maybe, and if you can connect with me, the people who did do business with Mars, okay? And for those who didn't, I really hope we will be able to do this together. I mean, this is it for this part. I'll leave the floor to Patricia again. We're gonna start talking about the presentation, and then we're gonna play a quick quiz at the end. I hope you like this this quiz time. All right, now I'm gonna move and start talking about, so we wanted to give you a few definitions because, you know, tendering process, or when we say a tender, it is not always the same, you know, across. It really depends what we want. So there are 4 different ways to actually approach a potential supplier in the market. And those ways are what we call RFI, RFQ, RFP, RFT. So R stands for request, and F is for, and then the I is, for example, information, Q is for quotation, P is for proposal, and T is for tendering, okay, or tender. All right, so I'm gonna start giving you a little bit of a difference between those 4 and what does it mean for you, okay? If you move to the second slide, you will see that, you know, what's an RFI? The RFI is usually, it's a request for information, and companies like us, we send it when we actually want to probe the market for possibilities. Yeah, so basically this is the RFI. RFI is not necessarily used all the time. I'll give you an example. We used RFI, for example, in Egypt and in many other markets when we wanted to understand more about the competitive environment in the market, when we wanted to collect information about, you know, what does it mean for a certain category, who are the players there, who are the strong suppliers in the market. This usually an RFI is followed by it's not actually, doesn't end up necessarily with a contract, or doesn't end up necessarily with an RFQ, because it's really like collecting information. An RFQ is the most commonly used way of interacting with suppliers, because it's such a straightforward tool. So it's when we know what we want, we have exact details of the products we're ordering. For example, I want to order laptops, and I know I want, for example, a certain strength, a certain capacity, a certain memory capacity, you know, I don't know, like heavy duty or something. So I know specifically what I'm looking for. So this is when I launch an RFQ. It has usually in it a bill of material, quantities, specific quantities that we order, and of course terms and conditions, and the Incoterms. And Incoterms, I put here the link to Incoterms, but it's a very important thing to understand. What does it mean for you as suppliers when we say a certain Incoterm is required? Of course, delivery timeline, expected lead times, qualities, etc. And we share in any of those requests, we share the draft of the contract. And I'm sure you guys you've done businesses before, you understand the importance of that as well. All right. The next slide is about the RFP and Rft. So request for proposal and the request for tender. So the request for proposal is like an RFQ. However, it's when we don't have a clear requirement or a clear vision about what we're looking for. So we want actually to request the supplier to propose for us a solution. I like to call it request for solution, because it's, you know, when we send out in an agency, if I'm looking for a marketing agency, I send like the brand image that I want, you know, an idea that I want to implement, and then the suppliers, they will propose, you know, how a solution for that, what are their pitch for this idea, how would they see it, you know, materialize in the market. So that's when we launch what we call RFPs. So it is the vaguest type of request for suppliers. And we usually give a longer time in these kinds of requests to the suppliers to come back with questions if needed. Tender is usually very specific. Tender is, it's a very defined one. And it's common when we talk about, for example, construction, or, when you have to subcontract a project. So we do what we call tendering. And, we are reaching out to purchase either a service or a product that already exists. So we requested for a tender because it is a product or service that already exists. So that's the difference between RFP and RFT. The RFP is vague. It can be like a product that doesn't, or service that doesn't exist, but we want the supplier to come up with an idea, to be creative. However, the RFT is specific. All right. Please feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to move. You can put your questions in the chat and we can talk about it as we go. So now I know you're asking yourselves, or I don't know if you know already, the people who answered that they are so confident with the tendering processes, they might know already this one, but how do we search at Mars specifically? How do we search for potential participants? Usually, it's either we have a pool of already approved suppliers with whom we've worked in the past, or we do an online search. We definitely use LinkedIn a lot. So that's why I really encourage all of you to be active on LinkedIn, to have your page there, or we look on Google for, potential suppliers. It really depends on the country we're in. And sometimes we do direct contact with companies. Like, for example, this forum today might actually create a contact for us where we can collect information about potential suppliers and share it with myself, my colleagues, and we can get in touch with you based on that and based on the needs, of course, of the company. Now, the invitation is launched through two ways at Mars, I'm saying, because other companies or governmental entities, they do different types of launching. But companies like us, specifically, Mars, we either launch an RFP or or even an RFI, or a tool which we have is Ariba at Mars. Okay, it's an SAP tool. Okay, the two ways we launch a request or we invite potential suppliers. Okay. And definitely use partners like WEConnect we are actively connecting and participating into those forums to actually look for suppliers, especially under the framework of, diversity and inclusion. In the region, there is actually a need for us to find more and more women-owned businesses that and add them to our potential suppliers at Mars. So now the process of how do we do this kind of invitation? So now when we launch a process, what does it start with? At Mars, it starts with an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. That's a very important milestone in the tendering process, or I'm calling it tendering process, but like I said before, there are many ways to send requests and different types, but I'm gonna call it tendering process. And so we send either a unilateral NDA, non-disclosure agreement, or a bilateral. Unilateral, it's when we request the supplier to sign themselves only. Bilateral is when it's signed by both parties, because there will be an exchange of data or information. So we out of mutuality, we protect both companies when we launch this kind of invitation. And then after NDAs are signed and shared, this is when we do the second step. So this is when we launch the actual RFP or the actual document that defines the needs. Okay. I'm gonna here talk about some etiquette of receiving from the supplier's side. And I know you guys know it, but it's important that we keep this in mind. It's important that you always answer, when, you receive those kind of requests. You answer if you have received them. Try as much as you can to respect the timelines for anything, for NDA return, for Q&As, for proposal submission, or for the presentations requirement. So as I said, in case of delay, please make sure you always request for an extension. All right, do not wait for the timeline to pass or anything. Request for an extension. At Mars, we usually understand if we are squeezing a lot the timeline, that extension is needed, and we do provide extensions if required. All right, so the third step in the process is to do assessment calls. So we usually do that after receiving the proposals from the suppliers. We do assessment calls. And here you guys need to be ready with a presentation that is straight to the point, and be prepared with any answer or any question that might arise out of this request. So it's important again here to be ready and to be professional, and I'm sure you guys are already. I'm just stressing on those points or some pain points that we usually face when it comes to the process. And the fourth step is it's the decision making. Here you have to you have the right, as I always say to the suppliers, to request for feedback. In case you are successful, that's great. If not, then feedback about why you didn't manage to get this this time, and what are the things you can do to improve, and be better for the next interactions with any company. So it's important, and it's your right to get feedback about the decision. All right. And the fifth step is the contract. Usually, really here, contract is an important, document for you and for us as a company. So I'm going to talk a bit more about this in a bit. But those are the 5 steps in summary of a tendering process. Okay. Any question here? If you want, I can stop a little bit. Okay. Perfect. We're gonna move to the next slide. All right. Here, I'm gonna give you some hints and tips. We talked about, somebody said it's always, a bit hectic when we do a request for a proposal or a tender, because, there are a lot of documentation. So I want to give you like, what are the documents that we usually require, so that you keep them, in a very safe place on your computer or on your desk or wherever, preferably on your computer, so that you are ready. Because after a selection process is done, you will be required to provide all those documents for us to register you as a supplier. I want to mention something here. At Mars, we don't register suppliers before they participate in a tender. We register them if they are successful. So when I say approved supplier, it means a supplier who went through a certain process of selection and was approved and is registered. So we don't register just for the sake of registering. We only have in our database active suppliers, okay? Suppliers who we work with. And any supplier we didn't work with for a complete year, even if they are registered, will become inactive. So we deregister them from the system. In case we're gonna rework with them, we'll have to re-register them again. So again, I'm highlighting this because it's important. Some people ask me, how can I register at Mars? So that's why I'm telling you that you cannot register unless you're invited to do so through a tender or a request for a quotation or a proposal, and you're successful. So to register you, what do you need to have? You need your trade license. It's important to have your commercial registration, or any equivalent that is in your country. Some countries, they call it something else, but anything that proves your companies has been registered, and they are legally operating. If it's applicable, the tax registration number, and a letter verifying your bank account. This letter has to be on the letterhead of the bank, of course, that shows that this bank account is linked to your company. And definitely the copy, if needed, it depends really what we're doing here, but, copies of owners, if it's a one person or a freelancer, they share a copy of their IDs, passports, etc., and power of attorney if it's not a trade license, okay? For the rest of the documents, so those are not necessarily like required. So what I mentioned before are required. Those are different types of documentation that you need to keep as well, establishment card, article of association, really depends on the size of your company. If you are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, membership for that. Insurance copies, if you have insurance for your company, the policies of your company that are sometimes required. I can tell you that at Mars, we have the agenda of sustainability, becoming sustainable in a generation. That's why, for example, any process around ESG, health and safety, we might actually ask you to provide that during the process. So it's important, if you have it, to keep it. The profiles, the bios of your key staff, and the list of your clients and customers. That is something we might require if we're talking about reference checks, and we usually do that in the process of a tender. We do reference check. If you provided references about companies you've worked with, we call those companies and ask them for that. Sometimes we require audited accounts. It's not every time, all right? So don't be scared of this, complex documentation requirement. Now, I'm going to move to the next slide, please. Now, make yourself visible. Like we said before, how can we find you if you're not visible? All right. So make yourself visible on search engines. I don't know, one page on LinkedIn, or the effort of registering on the WEConnect, doing the certification with WEConnect is something that will allow us to find you, right? Because we usually look for suppliers if there is a requirement. So make yourself visible, have your documentation needed, enhance your network. And it's part of, what your participation today is actually a proof that you guys are interested in enhancing your network. So please continue doing so. And, and also like participate in other forums if you can, so that we get to know you and companies like Mars get to know about your companies. I mean, I wanted to highlight this because it is actually sometimes a make it or break it, part of the deal of the RFP or RFT or RFQ. When we talk contract, it is the document that defines our relationship with the suppliers. And it's important for you. I wanted to highlight to you what are the terms that are very important to look at to protect yourself, but also that are very important for us as a company to have in a contract. So when we say cancellation policy, if there is a cancellation policy in the contract, make sure you understand what it means for you if there is a cancellation. Make sure you read the clauses. You add any clause to protect yourself or your company from, any damage out of this cancellation. Keep that in mind when you're reading the contract. So penalties, if there are any penalties for delays, make sure, of course, not to be late, but those penalties will affect you if you feel that you have, a risk of getting late. So here I'm really playing the role of the, the devil's advocate. I'm giving you ideas that I shouldn't do. But I really want you guys to feel that this is, I hope it's beneficial for you to understand what are the things to focus on. And termination for convenience. Us as Mars, we have this as a mandatory clause when it comes to relationships with suppliers, because in this volatile world, we do need this flexibility to terminate any contract, especially if they are beyond a year. We are currently signing only 1-year contracts, but if there are any that we are obliged to sign for more than that, we do have the need to keep this termination for convenience. I know some of the contracts I have at my company where it's not available, and there is, issue with the supplier or need to terminate because, there is no budget anymore. It creates a lot of problems if it's not present. But this is also something that creates a risk for you. So keep that in mind if you find a termination for convenience clause. Of course, the term of the contract, it's a negotiable point. So make sure you read that and you understand what it means for you. If the contract is 1 year, what does it mean for you in terms of cost? If it's a 2-year, and dare to ask for longer term if you feel it makes sense. Of course, don't ask for it just for the sake of relaxing after, for 2 years. Just think about what it means for you, to have a certain term of the contract. SLAs and KPIs. For us, it is our assessment tool, our performance assessment tool for the suppliers when we talk about service level agreement, SLA, KPIs, key performance indicators. So what those two, acronym mean, it's really how we define the performance. So if we require a certain level of service, let's say 90% of, of certain deliverable, then make sure you abide by that, because you will be assessed. And under the termination clause, I want you to know that there is something we call termination for breach. And we usually terminate if the breach is related to a KPI breach. It's important for you to understand those KPIs, to negotiate them, to make sure they are achievable, and stretch yourself so that you achieve those, and you'll be, proud of your achievement. So keep that in mind as well. The dispute resolution jurisdiction. Sometimes for Mars, for example, our standard dispute resolution jurisdiction is UAE, because our Mars GCC company is established in the UAE. So this is where we usually have our dispute resolution jurisdiction. If you feel, or if you know that it's not possible in your country where you're based, make sure you look at this clause and negotiate it, and involve a lawyer if needed, or if possible, in some of those cases, because this is a very important clause if there is any issue that arises between you and your suppliers, not only for Mars, any other customer that you deal with. Insurance policy also, we have certain specific insurance requirement, so please keep that in mind. Okay, I'm talking here a lot because it's a very important part of the tender, especially for suppliers. Thank you. I'll move to the next one. There are also other points in the contract that we will cover. So payment terms, the famous payment terms. It's very important that at Mars, we are very mutual, like I said before. I'll give you an example. This year, we've done what we call a revamp of our payment terms with SMEs. And we've reduced some SMEs to 60 days, or in some cases, 30 days. The ones that used to be 90 or 120. Our standard payment terms are 120 days from invoice receipt date. However, as I said, we looked at that and we noticed that, due to everything that's going on in the world, SMEs are suffering, and we want to, keep the relationship going. So we reduce those. It's important for you to look at the payment terms and understand what it means for you, okay? Because it's all about your cash flow here. Thank you, Hind. It is, and as I said, Mars as a company, we are always trying to keep this mutuality in mind. Our principles, we really abide by them day by day. This is how we operate and we work. Tax liability, it's important for us to understand, the tax liability. I'll give you an example. There is, for example, what we call a withholding tax. So if you are, for example, based in UAE and you're invoicing somebody in KSA, the withholding tax activates, because there is legalities within KSA. They want to encourage local invoicing. So the withholding tax can be pretty high in some cases. I know, for example, in Kenya, it can go up to 15, if I'm not mistaken, 15% or 20% if you are invoicing from outside of the country. So it's something to keep in mind when you are also doing a contract. What is your tax liability? And this is something you can, contact a lawyer or tax experts to give you some, to consult you on these points. Like cross-border dealings falls within the same. So how to do cross-border dealings if you're dealing with us from a different country. Liabilities. Yes, what is the liability that you have? If we're talking about our products as Mars, for example, when we deal with the distributor in a market, there is a very important liability clause that activates, because if there is any quality issue in the product, a consumer raises any complaint. So we need to ensure that we have these clauses as part of the relationship between us. If it's a marketing agency, it's very important because it's a brand image liability. So it's important to keep also those in mind. As we said here, if it's sizable, if the contract is big, do not hesitate to engage with a lawyer. And of course, read before signing the contract. It's very important to have, to understand what you're signing on before signing a contract, okay? Thank you. We'll go to the next slide. Unless there are questions or anything before we go again to the quiz. Any questions? Okay. As part of the quiz, we have a Q&A. So I'll try to share my screen here again. Okay. I'm gonna start. Let's start the game. I love this game, by the way, guys. I don't know if you noticed. All right. What is the most commonly used request by the procurement team? What is the most commonly used request by the procurement team? Is it an RFQ, RFS, RFP, RFT? Wow, that was a fast one. Correct, RFQ, bravo. 6 people said RFQ. And this also counts how fast you were in answering. So let's see. After that, the leaderboard. All right. Let's go to the second question. Come on, guys, answer correctly. What is an RFS? I didn't mention it on purpose because I want you to guess. I think I mentioned it when I was talking about the RFQ, RFT, and RFS. Lots of acronyms. Okay.
Oh,
request for service. It is a request for solution. You remember I was telling you about the request for proposal? And actually, now I like to call it request for a solution. And it's like a very nice and new word to use when it comes to the requests that go out, because really we look for suppliers that have or provide solutions. It's important that you become this kind of supplier. What is the 5th step in the tendering process? Let's see. So there are 5 steps we mentioned. Is it interviewing the supplier? Is it Q&A calls? Is it contract signature or NDA signature? I can see some correct answers here. Okay, so the correct answer is contract signature, effectively. Great. Somebody answered after we shown the correct one. All right. Let's go to the question. Ready? What is the most challenging phase of a tender and why? And this is really a free answer. I want you guys to tell us, what is the most challenging phase of a tender and why? Is it when we're negotiating the contract? Is it when do you feel it is very challenging for you when it comes to a tender? Assessment phase, getting feedback. Yeah, I'm gonna go back if I can to see the answers. Mentimeter is a bit harsh, it removes them. Yeah, so assessment, getting feedback. Oh, doesn't let me read. Okay, filling out the documents because some are not standard and you need to fill out documents. All right. So that really makes sense, guys. And I think it's important, like I said, to deal or to reach out to the companies to ask for feedback when you don't get it. When it comes to assessment, I'm telling you from my own experience, the most important thing for you to do is to know how to tell the story, and to know how to present your proposal. Make it very clear, make it very straight to the point, and the assessment is easier. Because I'm on the other side and I know that sometimes it's hard to assess because it's, we don't get the right answers or we don't get the right flow of ideas. And so that's why it's important. the documents that are not easy to understand, I think this is good feedback. And I think as procurement leaders, we should start thinking about, simplifying those documents to make it also easier for everybody to read and understand. I agree. So let's see the leaderboard here. Dragonite.
Oh.
Dragonite us. Bravo.
Wow.
Who's Dragonite?
We definitely have some
Bravo.
really smart ones
Excellent.
online. Wow.
And we had a Beyonce with us. Amazing. Okay, congratulations. I think that's really good. This is just a bonus question. It's not about winning. Or I want to know, how much do you feel you learned today from this session? Do you feel you have learned a lot, very little, not at all? Tell us. That's nice. Anybody feels that they didn't learn at all today? It's okay, we understand, because sometimes some of you guys have already seen all this, and maybe you're 100% aware of all those answers. So please be honest here. It's an anonymous one, so I don't know whose Dragonite is. So you can say Dragonite. That is.
Will anyone admit to being the winner here, being Dragonite?
Yes, we want to say congratulations.
We want to know who it is.
All right. Thank you, guys. I mean, here, do you have any questions? Please feel free to write them here again, or I don't know, Millie or Patricia, do we have anything in the chat you want to answer? This is it from my side for today. Thank you so much for everybody for your participation, and I really hope you got a little bit out of this. And so sorry for my connection. I think it got better.
Don't apologize for the internet. Don't apologize for the internet. I love this statement on this last slide. The world we want tomorrow starts with how we do business today. That is fantastic. And I do know that Mars is a very responsible buyer. I love the fact that you commit to give feedback even if they don't win, because you always want to help the suppliers get better at what they do. And I know that you're really dedicated to especially helping diverse suppliers along this journey. So it's really inspiring. Yeah.
Thank you, Patricia. And I really want to say, it's not because I am a Martian and I am in love with my company. I love it because of this, because of the fact that it's a very human company. I mean, when we all deal with each other the same way and we deal externally the same way. I'm not saying we are angels. Of course, we do mistakes. And of course, there might have been mistakes done in the past. But I can tell you that as a company, we do respect a lot our partners. And we expect the same, the mutual respect as well from the partners. And so, yeah, thank you so much again, Patricia, for this opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Are there any more questions that y'all have? Go ahead, Suni, ask your question.
No worries. Thank you so much for your time today, Diana, and thank you so much, Patricia and Millie, for setting this up for us. It's a great opportunity for us to get this opportunity to talk to you. I just wanted to ask a little bit about the relationship you have with helping SMEs. I've been through this process before when I've worked at design agencies, and I know there's a particular way or a procedure. It can take a bit of time. There's a lot of documents, there's a lot of rigor process involved, but how are you working with SMEs in particular to try and get, through some of those barriers? And the business models are so different from much larger corporations. And I just wanted to know what Mars have put in place to do that.
Make available, if I understood your question correctly, so you're saying if there is any other kind of support to SMEs other than going through the full process of the selection process, if there is a need. I can tell you something, Suni. When it comes to Mars, the way we launch our RFPs is really simplified. We don't complicate the process, and that's why we give actually a fair opportunity to SMEs to be able to participate. It's not as complicated as other tenders that you might participate, especially when we talk about indirect procurement. Direct procurement is a bit more strict. It's a bit more because it requires certain specific quality assurance, and it goes through a different process. When we talk indirect procurement, the process is pretty straightforward, and it really depends on what we are sourcing for. It is a pretty simple process. It's just about suppliers proving their capabilities through portfolio sharing, through reference checks, and then it is actually taken into consideration. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. I hope I did.
You did. I worked on a pet care tender a couple of years ago, and that was obviously, and the process has probably changed since then, and that was also working for a large corporation. I had a team around me because there was so much documentation, there was so many things to fill out, etc. And that's why I was like, how can a small business possibly do something like that? Because you'd be swallowed up in weeks worth. But it's good to know that it's straight to the point, it's much more refined, and to your point, it's looking at capabilities and skill set to see whether that's something that you can prove that you can do or have done, and you've got the skill set to do that. So now you have. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Anybody has other questions? Thanks a lot, Sonia, and congratulations. I just saw that you were the Dragon Eyes.
Thank you.
Hi, Diana.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Ngwana Magva from Abbott Technology. I would like to find out what services is Mars looking for?
Good question, yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, listen, I'll tell you something. We have a certain list of services. What I will do, maybe Patricia, I don't know if you agree, I'll share with you, the services we're looking for, because some of the services are actually globally led. So when we talk about the region or the regional sourcing, it's specific types of services. So I can share that, but I can tell you, for example, when I look at marketing and sales, we do look for merchandising services. We look for displays, point of sale material, production services. We look for facility management on a certain scale. We do look for some recruitment for blue collar agencies, recruitment services. So that it really depends on the need, and especially if it's not a global category.
Okay, no, thank you so much, and I'll await the list from Patricia.
For example, media is global category. I can other categories within locally. We also deal with content production, production of content, and for production agencies, we do look for local production houses. So I will share with Patricia some examples, maybe that, and if you want, Patricia, we can share with them, or
I've got a question. So first of all, Diana, thank you for spending your time with us today. Just wanted to inquire in terms of the services. I think Nwanga had alluded to that. I'm interested in finding out if there are solopreneurs or entrepreneurs who might be facilitators, coaches, consultants, and speakers. Is there a space for them to deliver and support Mars? Like, let's just say if somebody was a leadership coach or trainer, or a speaker or a facilitator in leadership, would they need to go through the procurement process like this, or is there another way in?
We actually definitely, listen, I'll tell you something, to be very honest about this specific topic. At Mars, we have what we call Mars University. So it is more or less a global, a globally led category. So usually we don't look for outside trainers or coaches. It's really coaches within the company. However, it doesn't mean that this is something that we not at all look at in the future. So when and I'm gonna answer your question as well as another question that I saw in the chat. So we don't, as I said before, we don't register suppliers. We just reach out to suppliers that are in our database or have, we have collected, through certain forums. We reach out to them when there is a need that arises within the company. All right, so we don't have like a registration process. So I cannot go today, cannot give you a link and tell you go and register yourself as a supplier for Mars. It doesn't work this way at Mars. It's actually the other way around. So we have to reach out to you because there is a need that arises that is linked to your expertise, okay? So that's why I was saying you need to make yourself visible, stay connected to us as well, like, and give us, your portfolio, your profile. So if there's any need that is linked to your profile, we can reach out. But when it comes to specifically what you mentioned is, as I said, we do have Mars University, we do have LinkedIn Learning. So all those, requirements for trainings and learning is actually provided by Mars through those tools. And it is a globally led category when it comes to that. But it doesn't mean we don't do anything locally. It could be something, smaller, but we can do sometimes local sourcing for that. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I think this is a good reason to make sure that your We community profile is up to date, has the keywords that a company like Mars would be looking for. It's probably worth looking anytime there's a change with your company or you have a new product or a new service location or anything, to go and update your We community profile. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Yeah. So any more questions? Because we've sort of come to the end of both the presentation and the networking. And Diana has been so nice to stay on for a bit extra time. So thank you. We hope you join us for the next event. Please keep looking at the events calendar on the WEConnect website. Please tell your friends and colleagues, other women-owned businesses about us. We are on a big drive to increase the number of women-owned businesses registered and certified on the database. This is a big commitment we have to a major donor. So, and it's really going to help our member buyers too. So please let your friends who are women-owned businesses know about us and get them to register, at least register on the database. Okay.
And Patricia, before you go, would you, as your brand, WEConnect International, be interested in doing a small presentation about WEConnect into other bigger or other female-run networks?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right, I definitely will reach out because I'm connected to quite a few, and I think there's definitely some merit there.
Okay, great. Michelle,
Brilliant.
you're based in London, right?
I'm based in London, but I travel to Dubai quite often. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, because we're looking to make presentations to networks in Europe,
Yeah,
Middle East, and Africa. So
brilliant.
Thank you so much again, everybody. Thanks a lot, Patricia.
and you all got Diana's email here, right? And her LinkedIn name, right?
Yeah, exactly. So please reach out. Thank you so much, everyone. And let's hope we can work together in the future.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.